Cold open question, Gary.
Yes, sir.
If you could break bread with any historical figure from the 20th century, now that's the 1900s, who would it be?
Let's go with man, why do you always do this to me? JFK.
JFK. Not a bad choice. I think I would go with Al Capone.
Good one too.
I think that would be fun. All right, let's start the show. Tonight on the Brian Lennon Show, we welcome Bill Rader and Sean Kane from That's Enough Outta You, the podcast, where we'll discuss history, sports, and anything else we want because it's our show.
Hey, you stole that.
I'm gonna give you guys the question that I asked Gary. If you could break bread with any historical figure from the 1900s, who are you gonna sit down and eat with?
But that's an easy one for me, JFK.
All right, so a table for three, you and Gary.
Not an easy one for me, but I'll probably go with, I'm going to go with somebody who was actually crossed over into the 21st century as well, and that is Steve Jobs.
Ooh, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah.
I like that one. So welcome into another episode of the Brian Lennon Show. Tonight we have on Bill Rader and Sean Kane. They are co-hosts of the podcast called That's Enough Outta You. And so, Bill, if you want to say hello so everyone knows your voice.
Hi, it's Bill.
And then we have Sean Kane as well. Sean, if you want to say hello.
Everybody? Hello, everybody. How's it going?
All right. So welcome onto the show. First of all, I want to say I enjoy the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's entertaining, but also informative, which I like. So I feel like I'm killing two birds with one stone. The first question I had for you guys is kind of how did that idea germinate for you guys to do the podcast, and specifically kind of what you've covered so far?
Well, I've been, I guess we've been doing this podcast for 30 years. We just haven't been recording it. Kind of like you guys. I mean,
that's a good way to put it.
We've had these conversations, time and time again. And, Sean and I have been friends. Full disclosure, Sean is my wife's first cousin. So I've known Sean since, I think, 1996. And we hit it off right away. And I don't know, Sean, if you have anything to add to that, but that's my answer.
No, I mean, that's definitely right. I mean, we've had these conversations for years. And as soon as me and Bill met, it was like, we knew each other forever. And we've been friends ever since. But I think the reason the name is all Bill. Bill came up with that name. And I think it was just because, it's That's Enough Outta You with all this information that's out there. We just got sick of it. And we wanted to do our show about what we want to talk about. And we wanted to break down a lot of the myths that are out there. And that's what I think we do on our show. And what I think makes it work is that a lot of times I go off the rails and Bill's there to keep me on track and get me back on the track. So that's what I think makes our show work.
Very good. Now, you guys have so far covered kind of a range of topics. The ones that I can kind of name off the top of my head is Vietnam, John F. Kennedy, Watergate, and you've also talked about some sporting events, rivalries with Red Sox and Yankees. How did you guys decide to, kind of hone in on those certain topics? Why is that of special interest to you guys?
I think it's just the things we like to talk about. Sean has been doing research on these historical topics forever. He's probably read every book there is on, on JFK and Watergate and Vietnam and all of those things. And then, we're both sports fans. We're both wrestling fans. We're both fans of, mafia and mafia movies and things like that. So it just kind of came naturally that that's what we want to talk about.
Yeah, and I do a lot of research on the declassified documents from the government. So I've been reading a lot of those for years. And, JFK is my idol. That's not a secret. Everybody knows that. And I just got sick of a lot of the disinformation that's out there. So that's one of the topics that we talk about a lot is JFK, and that whole time period of the 60s, because I think that's so important to really everything that's going on today. I think it's still relevant.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to the episodes. He's involved. Kennedy's presidency involves Vietnam. Some of the characters are still having an impact come Watergate.
Sure.
And then you could even make a case of his foreign policy, especially like in the Middle East.
Right.
Almost leads a direct correlation to 9/11 and kind of where we are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I learned all that from you guys.
That's one of the things that Kennedy was so worried about was the Middle East back in the 50s even. And it was so different than the Middle East is today. But he was worried about that uprising of the radical fundamentalists even back then. And I think a lot of his policies, things would have been so different because his foreign policy, what you realize when you research all this stuff, and you don't get this from the mainstream media, but his foreign policy is different in just about every country in the world. And the way he looked at things was so different because he was really a peace president, which we don't see.
Right. Now, question for you guys. You obviously talk about a lot of historical events. What's your background? What's your day jobs?
So, well, I'll go first, considering I have one. Sorry, Sean. So I work for a healthcare company, and my career kind of has the last 15 or so years has been in training, specifically in instructional design. So that's actually how I learned how to do the editing piece of the podcast. So I do the editing, I do the all of the audio, and I put together the YouTube podcast as well, the YouTube piece of it. So over the last 6 or 7 years, I've become I'm in a leader role in instructional design, but that's my background. That's what I've been doing for a long time.
Okay.
So for me, I was 20 years in operation management and in logistics, and I just kind of reset. A lot of things happened, outside factors that I don't want to discuss. It came down, and I just kind of reset. And I've always been an investor, so I've always been in the stock market and everything. So I was able to do that and reset what I want to do. And one of the things I want to do is get this podcast going and build this company.
Very good. And you've been both of you lifelong history fans of history.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of it from my dad and my uncles. They're all military people, and they were all big JFK guys. So I've been hearing that stories for years. But when I went to college, it was conversations with professors that I would have about the assassination, about inconsistencies with the government's official story, and really I've been researching this for really since high school.
Okay, good. And Bill, you mentioned a little bit about kind of the editing process. It seems
Right.
like everyone and their cousin or their best friend has a podcast nowadays.
Right.
Because it's become very easy. If you have a computer and a microphone,
Yeah.
you basically can record. As a fellow podcaster, we kind of just record live and shoot from the hip.
Yeah.
What does your process look like as far as like editing? How much time are you spending editing each episode?
So for an hour episode, I probably spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours editing. It depends on the conversation. It also, depends on if we have a guest. And it also depends on, and how many knows I have to edit out, because we both tend to say, quite a bit. And it's to the point now where I can actually recognize in the audio wave the shape of when I say it, that I can actually skip right to it and just clip it out of there. So yeah, it depends, but typically it's between an hour and a half and 2 hours to do the audio, and then takes me another 20 minutes or so to get it uploaded to YouTube.
What I guess platform are you using to record? And
We use Zoom like you guys do.
okay.
Yeah, I've audio has been a bit of an issue for me lately. I'm not sure why. So I was actually thinking about switching over to another. I think Riverside is one of the big platforms that a lot of podcasters use. We were thinking about doing that. I don't know that that's going to necessarily work. We tried it this past weekend and it didn't work out for us. So we'll keep going with Zoom, and I'll just keep messing with the audio and see if I can get that straightened out. But so yeah, we use Zoom to record. Then I use Logic Pro to edit the audio piece, and Final Cut Pro to do the video.
Okay. Much more advanced than we are, right, Gary?
Oh yeah.
Now, you guys have also had a number of guests on. Is it Lisa Pease?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lisa Pease. She wrote the best book on the RFK assassination. She's from Los Angeles. And we also had Jim DiEugenio on, who wrote many books, and he actually wrote the screenplay for the Oliver Stone documentary film, JFK Revisited.
How did that process go about getting them? Because they're pretty good gets for a podcast.
Well,
how did that process start?
I connected with Lisa on social media, and we just started talking about. I told her I was a fan of her books and stuff, and we just started talking and communicating. And then once we started the podcast, I asked her to listen to it, and she liked it. And then we asked her to come on, and then she's friends with Jim DiEugenio, so they were having a conversation one day, and she told him to check out our podcast, and he listened to the one, and it was actually the one on Vietnam. And he said, these guys are pretty good. I asked them if they like me to come on, and we were like, yeah, definitely. So when she reached out, we communicated with her. Yeah, we definitely want him on. And he was a great guest. And Bill, you could tell the story. We got him right in the middle of the NFL playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to that episode over the weekend, and I guess he's a big football fan, as both of you are, and you guys were recording it kind of Sunday afternoon of Wild Card weekend.
Right. Yeah, it was. We wanted to get him on quickly. We didn't want to put it off, so it happened to be that day where we were all free, except for the playoffs being on. And of course, my luck, the Giants. I'm a Giants fan. Giants haven't been in the playoffs in years, and we just happened to pick the time where the Giants were going to be having their first playoff game in years. But it's fine. I'm one of those guys. I actually prefer to record a little bit of the game before I start watching it. That way I can zip through commercials. So it worked out pretty well. But yeah, no, Jim was. You could tell. I don't know if you could tell early on in the interview, he was a little bit annoyed that we pulled him away from football. But I think as he got more into it, he was fine with it. And then then towards the end, we were having fun with him. So
well, once we got going, we couldn't stop him. I mean, Bill had to literally cut him off.
Well, we were
the Giants.
Sean and I were like texting each other during his going on and on. And Sean's like, this is great, but we got to stop him at some point.
I did want to ask you guys about that, because I was listening, and he kind of just took over the show and
he
did.
was asking himself his own questions and answering them.
But I think he's so used to it. I think he's done so many interviews, he's done so many of these that he knows what questions he's going to get, and I think he has, obviously he's got many of these things prepared ahead of time. So it was the best interview we've ever done. We hardly had to do anything.
Yeah, really.
Just sit back and relax and enjoy it, right?
And he's going to come back on too.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Now, speaking of like podcast guests, do you guys have any kind of like bucket list guests that you would love to have on the show, or are you efforting to Oliver Stone?
Oliver Stone, yeah. And with the fact that Jim knows him really good, it's not out of the realm of possibility. So that's one. I don't know about you, Bill.
Yeah, I mean that would be unbelievable. I think that would elevate the show to a much different level. But yeah, absolutely, Oliver Stone. I think also some of the I was thinking about this the other day, Sean. I'd love to have. I mean, obviously bucket list, but I'd love to get somebody like Eric Bischoff on the show and just pick his brain for an hour. He does a lot of podcasts. I think he has his own podcast actually, but yeah, I'd love to get somebody like him on the show and just pick his brain about wrestling from the 80s and 90s.
And also we do a lot of mafia and organized crime stuff. So I think, getting some of these guys that have their own podcast, some of these real life gangsters like Sammy the Bull Gravano or Michael Francis, that would be pretty cool to have these guys on.
Yeah, I'd be afraid of Sammy the Bull, though. I don't know.
Well, we wouldn't have him in studio, though.
Right.
Now that was another thing that listening to your podcast, I'm very easy to relate to is you guys like sports, all baseball, football. Bill, especially you enjoy hockey.
Yep.
You've done an episode on pro wrestling. Talk a little bit about kind of your pop culture reference and interests that you guys have kind of covered on the show, and maybe what you plan to do.
Yeah, so our first episode I think that we recorded was on The Sopranos. We went through season by season about The Sopranos. It's probably, for the two of us, it's definitely our favorite show, or at least one of them.
One of them, it's up there.
Yeah, and I think we also did an episode on superheroes, Marvel and DC, the superhero movies and shows and stuff like that, which we both love. We actually have a plan to do an episode on music. We want to do some music, the music that we enjoy from the 80s. So that one we have yet to record it, but we will hopefully in the near future. And then we have tons of other ones that we have, that we're hoping to do. We want to do an episode on that show called Tulsa King, which we both really liked, which is a show on Paramount Plus, and a few others. Sean, I don't know what you're thinking.
Well, we did one on The Godfather. We had a guest on for that one.
That's right. Well,
but
we got it was the offer.
Movies. Yeah,
the
offer. That's right. The making it a Godfather, but
right.
We got to cover like Goodfellas yet, and some of these other mob movies, and we got to do more sports too. I know we're working on one for college football on the name, image, and likeness (NIL). Yep. So that one's going to be coming up.
That's interesting. Do you guys plan to have an athlete on?
We're trying to line up guests, but if not, it'd just be me and Bill. And of course, I would go on a rant, and Bill will have to get me back in the tracks because I get a lot of strong feelings on this one. Because I'm a huge college football fan. And I just think name, image, and likeness, I think it should have been the best thing that ever happened to college football. And once again, the grown-ups in the room screwed everything up, and it's really like the Wild West out there right now.
Yeah, as we tend to do, we screw everything up. But
yeah.
Now, Bill, I feel like we're soulmates.
Okay.
Because we don't really know each other that well,
right?
but Mary Alice Murphy Raider, your wife,
Right.
was one of my first friends when I came to Bishop O'Hara.
Yeah.
We're both wrestling fans. You are a Rangers fan. I grew up as an Islanders fan.
Oh, well, that kills it right there. I'm sorry.
Yeah. We're both Giants fans. I don't follow the NFL as much as I do, but I was a Giants fan growing up.
Yeah.
And then we both graduated from Keystone.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah,
there's like a lot of we're on this like parallel path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I'm a proud actually 2002 graduate from Keystone. I took a rather circuitous route to get my my degree. I didn't go to college right after high school. Worked and was in a band for a while. I was actually in a heavy metal band for a number of years.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not, if you could picture me with hair out to here and a guitar and screaming as loud as I could scream. But yeah, I did that for a while in the early 90s.
Would have never have guessed that.
Oh, most people wouldn't.
Well, I'm a 2020 graduate of Keystone, so I took an even longer circuitous route to my degree.
Yeah.
Just add to that, I'm a graduate of Keystone too, and then I went on to Marywood after that.
Nice. All right. Now, Sean, is your degree in history or are you in business?
No, actually, my degree's in accounting. From Keystone, I have a degree in business, and then I have a bachelor's degree in accounting from Marywood. But history's always been my favorite, you know. But I've been involved in the stock market for a long time. My uncle, who just recently passed away, he was my mentor in learning how to invest. So that's one thing he taught me early on. But history is my real love. But it's just I went another direction when it came to college.
And Gary, what's your degree in?
Mine's in accounting and finance.
There you go.
Southern New Hampshire.
Cool.
Oh, okay.
A lot of that. So yeah. But actually,
that sounds like
funny is I teach math right now, but last year at one point I was teaching history. That was one of my passions too. I used to love history. So I was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I was teaching them world history, American history, and then civics. So
that's great. I'm surprised there are still grade schools that have history in the curriculum.
Yeah,
it's disappearing left and right.
So true. It's so true.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about one. I love your logo for your podcast. So I want to ask you, who did your logo? Where'd that come from? And then also your intro for your podcast. You have like a professional voiceover guy, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about kind of the marketing aspect for the podcast. That's Enough Out of You.
So we wanted to come up with something that looked familiar. And Sean, you want to stand up and show the logo?
Show it off.
There we go. So that's kind of like a Men in Black theme. The guy who did that for us was actually a guest on our show. His name is Alex Robinson, and he's a graphic artist. He does a lot of cartoons and things like that. And he also is a podcaster. He and a guy who goes by the name Pete the Retailer actually started they started the whole movies by minutes craze. I don't know if you guys listen to any movies by minutes podcast, but what they do is they take a movie. So these guys started it with Star Wars, the original 1977 Star Wars. And what they do is they talk about 1 minute every episode. So they'll take the first minute of the movie, talk about everything that's within it. So for Star Wars, the first minute is like, the opening logo, and then the crawl starts and they start talking about that. And then they just progress. So every single episode, which probably goes anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes or so, they just focus on that 1 minute. They always have really great guests, and it's just such an entertaining podcast. And then I've been listening to Alex and his brother Andy do the Godfather Minute, and I love the Godfather, and those are very long movies, so you can imagine they only do one episode a week for the Godfather. With Star Wars Minute, they do one every single day of the week, and they take time in between. But for the Godfather, they do one episode a week. I think it started in like 2016, 2017. And they're at this point, I think they're in the middle of Godfather Part 2. So it's taken them a while. So anyway, I reached out to Alex and I said, would you, because he does logos for a lot of these podcasts, a lot of the Movies by Minutes. And I've been in contact with him before through Facebook and Twitter and that kind of stuff, social media. And I've been a Patreon subscriber to a lot of his podcasts as well. So I said, I just reached out and I said, how much would you charge to do the logo for us? He gave me the price, and I sent him the pictures and everything. And a week or so later, he sent that back. So
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, he does fantastic work. And if he goes by Rob Twit on Twitter and Instagram. So if you're interested in following him, he does display on Instagram a lot of his work, a lot of his artwork that he does. But I would also highly recommend, if you are a Star Wars fan and you're really, you kind of have to be around our age to appreciate a lot of what they do, because they really talk, they're our age, and they really talk about their experiences growing up with Star Wars, the toys, and you know, all that kind of stuff. So it's really a fun podcast, and I highly recommend it. It's called Star Wars Minute.
Now, is he local to like Northeast Pennsylvania where we live, or is he?
No, he actually lives in Portland. Now he grew up in New York, and he was in New York for quite a while, and then he, I think sometime in the last 4 or 5 years, moved out to Portland, Oregon. But interestingly enough, his parents live in the area. His parents live, I think, in Pittston, which is kind of interesting, because that was kind of my hook into him. He mentioned it a few times on the show, and I emailed him and I said, hey, I live in that area. I said, if you're ever in town, look me up, and you know, maybe we can hang out. And of course, that never happened, but
You've got a logo to show for it.
Right, exactly.
And then for your intro, who is your intro guy?
So we actually changed the intro. That's kind
Just
of
recently.
Yeah, we changed the intro. So that was it's kind of a family situation. The person that did that intro, I don't know. I don't want to get into it, but it's.
Yeah, understand.
We had a professional voiceover person do it, and he no longer does it. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other podcasts that you guys kind of listen to, or that was the other thing I wanted to ask you. The other, Bill, back to being soulmates.
Yeah.
I think we are both influenced a lot by certain broadcast TV shows, radio shows.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys have done. You've talked a lot about Mike and the Mad Dog.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there any Howard Stern in your background?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Maybe even some Dan Patrick.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about kind of your media influences, if you will, as like who you listened to growing up and kind of what got you into maybe the podcast idea.
So Sean, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, Bill and me are both huge Mike and the Mad Dog fans. I mean, we listen to that show religiously. I think that was a big influence. The dynamic that those two had, I don't think it's unprecedented. I think they were the best at what they did, and you know, it's a shame that they broke up when they did. But those guys were great. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to Black Op Radio. There's a lot of political research. I listen to that one a lot. I've been guest on local podcast, the Garlic Jar podcast, several times. I listen to that one, but I would say, Mike and the Mad Dog was really my big influence. And I think the dynamic that they had is what, me and Bill would try to strive for, really. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. It was so. I think
I think we
another.
get along a little better than they do, though.
Well, so far. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I think another thing we may have in common, and I know one of you was born in New York, right? Was that okay? So that's another thing
I
we
was
have in common.
I was born in Connecticut,
Oh, okay.
but then I lived on Long Island from the time I was 3 till I was 12.
Oh, okay. So I was born in Queens, lived in Queens until I was 5. But my dad grew up in New York. My dad grew up on Long Island, and I mean, that's why I have such a New York influence in my life. I like all the New York teams. It's because of him, and he really got me into a lot of like Howard Stern. We used to listen to Howard Stern together. He would kind of sneak it on the radio when nobody else was in the car, and so it was funny because it was while Stern was still at WNBC, which if you've seen the movie WAMBC, so
Right.
he was still there, and that's an AM station, but you could get it here in Northeast Pennsylvania if the weather was absolutely perfect. I had this little Sports Illustrated football helmet radio, and I would come home from school because he was on in the afternoons. He was on from 3 to 7, I think, in the afternoon. And I would run upstairs and I'd turn on my little radio, and I'd have to like move it around to keep the signal. But I would listen to Stern even then. And then obviously as he got that TV show, and then he was on E for a long time, and then eventually on to Sirius. So I stuck with Stern for years, and that was a huge influence on me, Howard Stern. And then of course Mike and the Mad Dog. It was basically the same thing. I could listen to them because that station that Howard was on, WNBC, became WFAN, and so you could still hear from time to time. You could hear the Mike and the Mad Dog, and they were on basically at the same time. So I was out of school by that time, but I would still try to listen to it when I could. And then they ended up on television also. I think they were on MSG and then the S network.
Right. Yeah, that was the other thing I knew. Like, we had kind of a similar background and probably what we've listened to growing up.
Yep.
Any other podcasts that you like to listen
to?
to?
A ton of podcasts. I don't even know how I have time to do it, but I listen while I do housework, like while I do things around the house. But I do. I listen to a bunch of Rangers podcasts. I listen to the Conan O'Brien. He does a podcast called Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, which I love. There's a podcast called Smartless, which I don't know if you guys have heard of. That's it's Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, who was in
Will and Grace.
Will and Grace, thank you. And then Will Arnett, who you probably know him as the voice of GMC. We are professional grade, and he also does the Batman voice in the Lego Batman movies. So that's a great podcast. They always have a great guest on. I'm trying to think of the other ones. I listened to a podcast called Pod Save America, which is a political podcast. Those guys, they all worked for Obama. So, obviously you can tell which side of the aisle that they're going to be talking about. But for sure, it's a good podcast, very informative. And then a couple other things here and there, shows that come up, like listen to an after show for like Game of Thrones, or some of these other pop culture shows that come up and are real popular. Oh, and then the one that I think I mentioned on our Star Wars podcast, one called Rebel Force Radio, which is obviously Star Wars podcast. Those guys have been doing it for a long time, and they're really entertaining. I think they have a connection with Lucasfilm, so they get a lot of, we don't play any clips or anything like that, any audio clips, because we're afraid to get sued. But they do a lot of that stuff. They play audio clips from the shows, and they have a lot of guests from. They used to have Dave Filoni on all the time. I don't know if you know who Dave Filoni is, but he actually, so he created the Clone Wars animated series, and he also is doing, along with he does the Mandalorian along with what's his name? I can't think of his name, but he's one of the creators of the Mandalorian series on Disney Plus. John Favreau, that's
it. I'm like, I couldn't think of it either. I'm like, oh my god, I could picture him.
Yeah,
Also a New York guy.
He is. That's right. Yeah.
While Gary gets you guys up for some news of the weird?
Sure, absolutely.
Sure.
You don't
All
mind
right. While Gary gets that ready, why don't you guys give listeners the details on where they can find the That's Enough Out of You podcast and all your plugs.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So That's Enough Out of You is the name of the podcast. It is on all podcast outlets, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you can find a podcast. And if you have a podcatcher that doesn't have us on it, let me know and I will get it on there somehow. We also release our shows on YouTube the day before they come out on the podcast app. I always say this, if I remember to do it. Sometimes Sean will text me in the middle of the day on Thursday and say, anytime you're ready. And I'll say, oh, I forgot to do it. But I'll, once I'm done with work, I'll hop on there and get it uploaded to YouTube. So Sean, I can't think of anything else. Do we?
You have a Facebook page.
No, right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Facebook and
Twitter,
Instagram,
LinkedIn.
We'll do TikTok one of these days too. I think once we're once we're brave enough to start doing video, we'll probably start putting clips on TikTok.
I want to see Sean dance.
Those the dance.
You might have to get the kids to help you with that, Bill.
That's right.
They're into that. All right, you ready, Gary?
Let's do this.
And now it's time for news of the weird with your host, Gary McDaniel. All right, we're going to go to our Tampa newsroom where Gary McDaniel has all the news fit to spit.
No, you have to have that sound effect, right? The newsroom sound effect, the typing and everything.
Yeah, see, I find that one. Don't have that on my little box here. So, all right. So, dog versus shark standoff thrills tourists in Bahamas boat tour. San Juan, Puerto Rico. The sight of massive hammerhead shark was a rare treat for 32 travelers on a tour boat in the Bahamas this week. But then something stranger still. A dog dove from a nearby dock to confront the monstrous sea creature. Tourists aboard the boat, the 4-hour excursion, can be heard shouting and pleading with the dog to turn back. In a video circulating on social media, oh my God, and get out, baby, and stop going after it. The dog ignored them and paddled after the 12-foot shark, which thrashed as the two animals circled each other in transparent turquoise waters near a private island in the southern Bahamas. When the shark swam away slowly, much to the delight and surprise of the crowd. I don't think the shark is going to mess with him, exclaimed this one man. The shark had emerged from under the boat during a tour Wednesday in the southern Bahamas, organized by Water Sports. Company reservation manager Rebecca Lightbourne told the Associated Press on Friday that the black and tan dog always runs along the shore to greet the boat when it passes the island. But it's the first time it was seen diving in. I guess this time the dog decided he wanted to protect his house or play with a really big fish in the water. So he went after it, Lightbourne said. When the shark swam away from the pier, the medium-sized dog scrambled back onto the rocks and looped away, earning applause from the tourists.
Are any of you guys beach guys?
Oh, I am for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of more of a beach bar guy, but
Have you ever
about my
seen
experience.
I know dogs like to confront other animals, and have you ever seen any dog in particular confront, probably not a shark, but any other type of animal?
I've seen videos. You always see these videos on YouTube about sharks, with sharks uh, and all kinds of different wildlife. I think, or not sharks. I mean dogs, right? That's what we're talking about. Dogs. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Yeah,
Dogs
sharks.
are sharks.
Yeah, right. No, you always see these videos with dogs like going after a bear or something that could absolutely rip its head off. Um, in fact, my dog, I have a little Morkie. He's 7 pounds, soaking wet, and the family that lives right next door to us. They have this enormous pit bull, and our dog constantly is barking at the pit bull. In fact, he got loose one day and he ran over into their yard and he went for her. He stopped dead in his tracks. He looked up at her and he was like, "Okay, I'm not messing with you." And he turned tail and headed right back to the house. Yeah,
And your dog's name is
my dog is Oreo, little black and white Morkie, a Maltese and a Yorkie.
okay. All right, what's next, Gary?
All right. Harley Davidson from 1908 becomes priciest bike at auction. All right, Milwaukee. A rare Harley Davidson motorcycle built in 1908 has become the most expensive motorcycle ever sold at auction, according to data compiled by a website that tracks vintage motorcycle sales. The strap tank Harley Davidson was recorded on vintagent.com as being sold for $935,000 after auction fees last month at the Mecum auction in Las Vegas. The bike was named Strap Tank because its oil and fuel tanks are attached to the frame with nickel straps. The bike is believed to be one of only 12 such models in the world. A 1907 Strap Tank sold for $715,000 after fees, but didn't go for as much as the record-setting 1908 Strap Tank because it was never restored. The record-breaking bike had many of its original parts, making it even more rare. We marketed the bike well, and Harley is by far the most famous American motorcycle brand. So we had a feeling it would be well at auction. But obviously, you are surprised anytime you sell the most expensive bike ever.
Either of you guys Harley guys or bike guys?
no, but we're fans of the Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I would be terrified to get on a motorcycle. Honestly, I'm that's just not something I would be into.
Anything of a personal interest that you would maybe spend more than you should for like a particular item, like a vintage Harley, some sort of memorabilia or something like that that you would have your eye on or something?
Oh, Sean, what do
Yeah,
you
I mean,
think?
I'm a sucker for sports memorabilia. My teams. I mean, I'm a fan of all the Boston pro teams, and that's why me and Bill get along so good. And then colleges, I'm a fan of Notre Dame, so I got a lot of collectibles.
So you do already collect sports memorabilia?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really do a whole lot of collecting. In fact, you can see behind me, really the only things that I collect
The extent of your collection?
that's pretty much it. Yeah, those three what are they called? Funko Pops, and then I have a Rangers puck that I bought I think I bought that in Madison Square Garden at some point in like the late 80s, early 90s. So that's pretty much it.
I have my eye on your microphone there as well.
Oh yeah, that microphone, that's a Yeti, a blue Yeti, and I got that for work. And I don't know, I tried it when we started the podcast, and I just didn't like the sound of it, so I upgraded to a whatever this is, a Shure something or other.
Okay. That's another question I have, just kind of geeking on podcasting. What kind of equipment do you guys use at home with microphones? You have a Shure, Bill?
Yeah, it's the Shure. I don't know, whatever the I forget what it's one of the standard industry standard microphones. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have. And then I have this little I don't know if you guys can see it. It's called a Vocaster. And that's what I plug my microphone into that, and then that goes into the computer.
And what does that do for you?
Well, without it, I wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't be able to hear me because the microphone is not a USB mic. It has the, what is it called? XLR cable. So it's just basically the interface that the microphone goes into, and then that plugs into the computer. And then I have my headphones plugged into that as well. And I can mess with it. I can kind of control the sound of, my audio with it. I can mute myself with it, and
cough button.
Yes, absolutely. So that's what I do. There we go.
And Sean, what type of microphone do you have?
I have the one that Bill told me to buy. Shopping,
Sean, I have to tell you this story. So Sean, I don't know what Sean was using when we first started, but I begged him to buy a professional microphone. I said, I will drive you to Guitar Center and pick one out for you. And so we did. I picked him up. We drove to Guitar Center, and we went to the audio section. And Sean basically said, okay, what's the cheapest microphone I can get away with? And I don't remember how much this one was, but I just remember Sean pacing back and forth thinking, I can't believe I'm spending this much money on a microphone.
I'm more of the content guy, doing the research for the content on the episodes. Bill's in charge of all that other stuff.
Well, you both sound great. Bill, we're going to finish up here a little bit. Bill, one of the funniest stories I've heard in a long time was one you told at the beginning of one of your podcasts when you were delivering bottled water to a friend and neighbor. If you wouldn't mind just indulging myself and our listeners.
Oh, he's going to kill me if he hears me tell the story again. So So these are pretty good friends. We're actually much better friends with them now than we even were at the time.
I'm sure.
So, okay. So I come home from work, or not come home. I'm home. I work at home. This is my office. But I forget where I was. I was somewhere, and got home, and Mary Alice said to me, I need you to take this stuff over to Stephanie and Brad. They're donating it to a shelter, to a women's shelter. So it was a case of bottled water and some other things. And I said, no problem. So I headed over there, and I pulled up in front of their house, and it was Halloween. It was around Halloween. So I noticed they had a lot of Halloween decorations, things lighting up and hanging in the front yard and hanging on the door and stuff like that, in the windows. So I go around to the back of the car, and as I'm walking to the back of the car, there's an open window in the front of the house, and I swear that I see a naked ass hanging out the window. And I'm thinking, what kind of a decoration is that? Who would put that in their front yard, in their window? So I'm walking around, I get to the back of the car, and I keep looking over to because I can't believe that could be it. And it's sure enough, it's a naked ass. And I gather up stuff and I start walking to the house. As I'm walking to the house, I realize it's Brad sticking his ass out the window of his home. And I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm walking towards. I don't know if something's going on in there. Are they having some kind of a crazy party that I'm suddenly walking into that I don't want to be? So I get closer and closer and closer, and I'm thinking at some point he's gonna like turn around, or he's gonna realize, hopefully not turn around, but he's at some point gonna realize what he's doing. And it just didn't happen. I walked by the window and I'm like, I knocked on the door and I hear like all of this commotion going on inside the house. And he comes to the door. Now, thank God, at this point, he's got like boxer shorts on, and he realized it was me. He thought it was his fiance and her boys, who he does this to. He moons them all the time. And he looked out the window. It was dark, so he couldn't really tell. He thought it was their car pulling up to the front. And
Right.
he's all apologies. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I can't believe it. And I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. Just here, take this, take the water. And I'm like backing away from the house. And I get into my car and I drove away, and I had to pull over because I just started laughing so hard. I couldn't believe what I had seen. And I called Mary Alice. And I said, "You're not going to believe this." And she said, "I'm on the phone with Brad right now. He's apologizing to me." Oh, it was crazy. But
that's a great. I love that story.
Then I had to put a post on Facebook. I think I said full moon out tonight or something like that.
Yeah, I was on a walk when I was listening to your podcast.
Yeah.
And just I was like dying laughing. I was worried like people were gonna be looking at me like, look at this guy, like just cracking up. Oh, it's a great story. And you guys are still close friends?
They actually, so they're getting married this summer, and they invited us to their wedding. They're getting married in Punta Cana, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to go. I wish we could, but we're not going to be able to go. But yeah, we're good friends with them, and even though I've seen way too much of Brad.
All right, before we finish up here, do you guys have anything you want to add, or a real quick question for you guys, just because I'm curious out of my own curiosity? How do you see and not spend a lot of time, but just kind of a real quick take from both of you? What do you see with the 24 presidential election as we kind of stand here right now in early spring of 2023?
Well, that's a loaded question with 5 minutes left. I mean, from my standpoint, I don't think it's a big secret what side of the aisle I'm on. I would prefer, if number one, the Democrats could take back the House. I'd like to see that as far as the presidential election. If Biden wants to run again, and from all accounts, he's not slowing down. I mean, he's telling everybody he's running again. That's what everybody's hearing from the White House. I will vote for him. I don't see a challenger on the other side that even remotely comes near anything that I would consider to be someone who I would vote for, someone who I think would be good for the country. So for me, it's probably, I mean, I know who it's probably going to come down to. I think we all kind of know who it's going to come down to at some point. And there's no way I'm going to, I'm going to switch my vote at this point.
And for you, Sean?
Well, you know what? I think the one great thing about our show is the absence of politics. We try to keep that out. We don't try to take sides. Like, we'll bash a Republican equally as a Democrat when they do something that deserves to be bashed, and we'll praise them when they deserve to be praised. So I think that's the thing that's great about our show. So as far as the politics, I mean, I think the biggest problem in this country is the extremes. Like everything in this country has to be taken to the extreme, either to the right side or the left side.
Yeah.
And for me, the answer is always in the middle, and that's where I tend to go. And I kind of don't want to give away which side of the aisle I'm on.
Yeah.
Do you think? I agree, and I think the majority of Americans agree that what we're seeing is maybe the extremes of the politics, where I think a moderate kind of central figure, either side,
Right.
Democrat or Republican, would be welcome.
It would be welcomed by the majority of the country. Unfortunately, the majority of the country is not what rules the two parties.
Exactly.
It's the extreme ends, the extreme sides, which unfortunately I don't see it ending anytime soon. I don't see it coming back to center anytime soon. I think we're getting more and more radical on both sides. At least the extreme folks, the extreme ends of each party are getting more and pushing more and more to their respective sides and getting more and more radical. Again, I don't think, as Sean said, I think the majority of the country is probably somewhere in the middle, moderate.
I think so.
But
Yeah.
again, I don't think we're going to see a candidate, that represents that. Absolutely.
All right. Well, maybe as we get closer to the election, you guys will kind of delve into that, because I'd love to, even if you kind of reference it to other historical elections and things like that. I'm looking forward to that. Want to thank you guys again for coming to join us tonight. Bill Rader and Sean Kane from That's Enough Outta You, the podcast, available on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, anywhere you can get a podcast, you can find it. If not, email Bill. He'll get it on there.
That's Enough Outta You show at gmail.com. That's the email. Or get in touch with Sean on Facebook. That's what most people seem to do.
All right. And you guys also, you post your new shows typically on Fridays, correct?
Fridays on
Friday at midnight.
Fridays on the podcast app, and Thursdays on YouTube.
On YouTube the day before.
Sometimes.
So
Sometimes.
depending on Bill.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you guys for having us on. I really
thank you.
it. This was a lot of fun, and we'll reciprocate. We'll have you guys on our show if you're interested in coming.
Definitely.
On. So absolutely.
Definitely interested in that. Yeah, I wanted to promote you guys because I enjoy the show.
Thank you.
And we got to stick together and
yeah, for sure,
help one another out. So I do appreciate that. Bill and Sean, that's enough out of you for tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That's going to be it for the Brian Lennon Show. Once again, thanks to Bill Rader and Sean Kane from That's Enough Outta You. And we will see you again next week.